And you told me a story which I love, which is that you're an intern at Much Music. You're working late in the night on your own videos.
Hmm.
Someone has taught you how to use the Avid editing system, so you're editing them. And then in the
Hmm.
morning, you sneak down and you put them on the cart so that
Yeah,
so that the
yeah,
VJs will play them.
yeah, yeah.
And I love that. So how important is it for a director
Mm.
to make your own career happen for yourself, to like not wait around for somebody to do it for you?
It's yeah. I mean, I think it's the same journey as almost anybody in the arts. If you're an artist, you have to you got to figure out that way to get your voice out there. You can't be daunted by rejection and barriers, because there's always going to be barriers. So yeah, I mean, and being a director, yeah, you got to try to um, live out what's in your spirit and put it out there and get it out there no matter what. So by any means necessary, you got to just try to do what you got to do. Yeah.
So what do you think music videos taught you about directing? Like, what was it that you were interested in exploring? How did you hone your style?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I think for a lot of young marginalized people, me being black specifically, it was there were some barriers, in terms of getting into filmmaking. I was a lover of television and films back in the day, comic books, and obviously hip hop, and you know, doing videos was sort of a way that I could get a chance to play with cameras, and get a chance to photograph and present, my culture, in the way that I saw it, and was very inspired by, cats like Hype Williams and Mark Romanek, and everybody knows my friend X, so seeing how they portrayed our music and the artists that made our music as sort of superstars was really inspiring to me. And so that was, it was the way in to sort of get into filmmaking and figure out, you know, about shots and wardrobe and art direction, and then it became about performance, and then it became about telling little short stories and little narratives and learning the craft of that kind of stuff. So it very much, hip hop music videos and music video in general is often a great lane in for people who don't have traditional either traditional means, education, or just the financial capital to get into it. It's a lot easier to experiment when somebody's paying you to experiment, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the barrier to entry can be pretty high. So you
Hmm.
made the switch to TV directing, especially in
Yeah.
like the youth and teen arena. What do you like
Hmm.
about youth and teen shows? Like, what do you like about that space?
I think, look, I mean, music in general is quote unquote the voice of the people, and I think the first people that clue into music, your musical journey starts when you're a young person, when you're a teenager. That's when you start finding your voice, and you find your voice through the music that you listen to, and they speak to you, and you feel it passionately. So, music's always been a big part of my life. Hip hop's been a big part of my life, and then hip hop is like the most powerful force in pop culture right now. You know what I mean? And it has been for a while. And I think it's because it is about speaking out against things. It is about calling out injustices, and it is about telling your own personal story, and that is universal. That can be in America, in Canada, but it can be in India, it can be in Russia, it can be in Nigeria. Like it doesn't matter where. There's always people wanting to tell their story and their experience, right? So, and I think that connection with the young people is something that I've felt very deeply. As I was doing music videos, I was also very involved in community outreach and making sure that young people like me, maybe not now, but me, so a few years ago,
Younger you, yeah.
younger RT, younger people like me could have a chance at accessing storytelling, and so, the genre of teen television seemed to be the one that was the most direct from being a music video filmmaker, because they kind of said, well, you kind of understand, what young people, what taps into young people. And so it was the first entryway for me. I mean, after that, I've expanded now since then to thing, but I do really like, young people know when something's real, man, and I like that sort of dialogue. Yeah,
Yeah, they know when something's real and they know when something's not.
absolutely.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what kind of a kid were you? Younger you?
Wow. Wow. What kind of kid was it? I mean, look, young RT was he was sometimes an introvert. Like I had this weird, you know, stories that I hadn't seen before. I like that fantastical kind of world, using my imagination and that kind of thing. But then other times I was very like, I really enjoyed, socializing and making people laugh and those kinds of things. So I was like a little bit of a mix of two, but I was definitely engaged in storytelling at a young age. I loved drawing. I loved comic books, and that sort of narrative visual storytelling really appealed to me. And I think that's what, interestingly enough, led me into filmmaking,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, whether I'm telling stories in a frame, drawing people, or I'm photographing them with a camera, I'm still having a point of view and sort of telling stories that I think are important. So that's pretty much for me in a nutshell.
Did you settle into the director role like right away? Did you think, okay, this is the thing I was meant to be? Were you sort of like ready to say action and get going?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I think at the very beginning, the first time I really, really kind of dabbled in filmmaking was, actually, it was like picking up a camera, and I think I had an inherent desire to sort of put somebody in front of the camera. I tried being in front of the camera. I'm horrible, so that's why I don't act. I don't even. I have so much respect for actors and performers to be able to put themselves out there. But I think I was attracted to the camera first, and I assisted on a couple of short films as a cinematographer. Not that I knew at that time what really I was doing, um, but doing that kind of helped me to understand. Okay, I think I like to be deciding how this looks, how it's framed, how the story flows, and that sort of led to me being a director. I definitely had very strong ideas that would come to me and naturally. So yeah, I would say that's the path that got me there.
When you started doing television, like, did you find that people wanted to kind of stream you into a certain stream? Did you find that there were like scripts that you were seeing, like, oh, we think you'd be a good director for this,
Absolutely.
what was that?
Joanna, it's like me. Yeah, no, I mean, without a doubt, and I mean, that's sort of something that comes, almost with the territory. In our society, people have biases, and it's sort of an offshoot of like, what happened to me when I was doing music videos. I think anybody who does music videos runs into a little bit of an issue, especially if you're a black filmmaker or something. Then they kind of think, okay, well, you like hip hop, so this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna do hip hop videos, and that's what you can do. And so, yeah, I mean, some of that followed me into the television industry. I mean, immediately it's sort of like, oh, you like music stuff, so you're going to be a music, anything that has to do with music, those are the scripts you're going to get, whether the show is a musical show or not. It could be, it could have been a firefighter show, but then they're like, yeah, well, like the firefighters have to put out a fire at a club. And so you're the music guy, so maybe you'll be interested in that, you know what I mean? So, and then, anything that has to do with, racial issues or discrimination. They kind of look. They're like, hey, well, you might know something about this, and that's not wrong. That I don't know things about that for sure, but sometimes you can get pigeonholed into that's the only thing that you're being looked at for, and that's kind of tokenism. So yeah, I mean, it happens, but I think as a filmmaker, you have to always, and as an artist, you always have to sort of fight your own little battles and figure out how you're going to navigate those things that happen.
Yeah. And you made sure
Yeah.
you didn't get pigeonholed, right? I mean, you did a show
Yeah.
about ballerinas in Paris, right?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
meet
Absolutely.
meet me in Paris. Yeah. Find me in
Yeah.
Paris, it was called.
Yes. Find me
Yeah.
in Paris. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think that, look, that's a definite sort of reaction to that kind of thing. I don't, I'm a filmmaker. I have certain tastes. I have certain likes, but at the same time, I never want, don't ever tell me I can't do something. That's a good way of getting me to do it.
Yeah.
So it's just, I have varied tastes just like anybody. And I think a lot of filmmakers of color face that kind of pushback, or that kind of bias that they think they're only good for one or two things. And I pride myself on being somebody who's well read, well cultured, and well traveled, and I have lots of different interests. And obviously, something like Utopia Falls is like science fiction and hip hop, which until now has been never put together. So it's those kind of things. Don't try to
Yeah.
limit me, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
You pitched Utopia Falls sort of all over the US, right?
Hmm.
What was like the passionate thing for you, and what was the most important element in your pitch that you think people really responded to?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, for me, I think when we went around pitching, it was really that I just wanted to see something different, for and knowing that this is going to be aimed at sort of a teen audience. I wanted, I see a lot of contemporary teen shows, and they deal with all these relationships and all that stuff, and that's great. But I know that young people are passionate and are also steadfast in the things that they believe. And it's been a while since I've seen something that really engages that young audience in that way, and really draws them into this need for advocacy. So I was very passionate about the fact that we had built a world that had flaws, and that the young people, and especially the young people of color, are the people that sort of figure out that there are issues and then strive to change that world. Because I saw that happening. Like we I used Elaine Welteroth, who was the former editor of Teen Vogue, as a example when I went around and spoke about this. And she is again a mixed woman of color, black woman, who young, and she got into this position in Teen Vogue, and she really changed the format of that magazine, because she's like, yes, teens are interested in, you know, your 5 workout tips are the best way to put your makeup on. But at the same time, they're very interested in, fighting for gender parity and fighting against discrimination. And they're incredibly more informed than a lot of people give young people credit.
Mhm.
So and they're on the front lines of this stuff. So I wanted to make a show that was for that generation, was for this new young generation that wants to speak out about things, knows a lot more than we think they know, and empower them to do so, especially the people that are marginalized, who don't really get that kind of a voice or get to see themselves.
Right. It is
Yeah.
crazy that people dismiss young people. Young people are the ones who change the world. If you're just
Yeah.
joining us, we're talking to R.T. Thorne about his series Utopia Falls. A lot of people are wondering about your background there, R.T. Is that
Oh
Radio
yeah.
Raheem? Is that
That
Radio
is
Raheem
Radio
behind you?
Raheem. That is Radio Raheem. That's, you know what I mean? Yeah. The great story of love and hate. The late great Bill Duke. So it's like, yeah, it's absolutely like, Do the Right Thing is one of my favorite movies. And has been for, almost my entire career. And, Spike is a pioneer. And Bill Nunn is a pioneer as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
here we are, man. I mean, did you ever imagine that your show would be so relevant to this moment that's happening? I mean, it is all about
yeah.
people finding out about history and finding out about systemic oppression and trying to do
Mhm,
something about it.
mhm,
Had you
mhm.
any sense that, I mean, obviously all the issues that we're dealing with now aren't new, but
Yes,
like the idea that suddenly it would be front and center in the consciousness of the world, right?
yeah,
Everywhere around the world.
yeah.
What does that feel like for you having this show that deals with exactly that?
It's pretty wild. I mean, it's pretty wild. I can't lie. I think, obviously these are things that you know, I've dealt with and my community's dealt with for years. And so that's, the POV that I had to come with to create this. It's no secret. It's a revolution led by young teens of color, but specifically, the two main leads are two black characters. And they're the ones that sort of, discover at first that the world is not quite what it seems to be, and then they use the knowledge of their past to sort of inform their fight moving forward. So, yeah, it's something that was like, because it's coming through me, it's going to be that story about sort of confronting um, people's privilege and making them realize that they are privileged, and that the first 3 episodes is really all about that. There's in fact a full discussion that Aaliyah and Bodhi have about privilege and recognizing and then what to do with it afterwards. So yeah, this time of sort of that everybody feels this sort of like conscious awakening. It's pretty incredible that there's a show that is like the core of it, and then I got a chance to create that, and I hope that for me I want it to be a discussion piece. I love it to be a co-viewing opportunity for some young teens, to see this and then talk with their parents or their older siblings who grew up, like me, with hip hop, and to have that kind of discussion and to sort of say like, wow, what these young people are doing is what you as a young teen now have to do and push for as well, So yeah,
And their history is your history, right? And it's I
without a
love
doubt.
I love the fact that you've seeded in just enough music also for the older generation that we can all we've got Snoop and we've got,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
lots of people that we can be like, oh yeah, it makes us just feel a little nostalgic. And then
yeah.
it
Right,
is the
right.
perfect family co-view.
Yeah.
Um, and how important was it for you to create not just BIPOC characters, but BIPOC heroes? Like the
Yes.
heroes of this piece are
Yes.
are Black and Indigenous and diverse
Yes.
kids.
Yes. Yes. I mean, super vital and very intentional. again, you talk about the science fiction genre, and look, I'll say this for the science fiction genre: it doesn't have a lot of to this point. It hadn't had a lot of heroes or main characters that were black or people of color or LGBTQ community as the main characters. But as a genre, science fiction has a pretty good track record of being one of the first that sort of bridges some of those gaps. Lieutenant Uhura and Star Trek. You know what I mean? Like these are things. In fact, Star Trek is Deep Space Nine. Cisco and that kind of stuff. But I think when it came to making a series, it was very intentional that those were going to be the characters that led it. And that is just because I hadn't seen that. When I was growing up, I really hadn't seen that. We were always the sidekick or the friend or the side character. And I wanted, this show to, specifically be led by two black characters and have a group of people of color, allies, and they're fighting for their own thing. It was, and you see it in the storylines in the show. It was important, for our lesbian couple. They're our main relationship in the show, and it was really important to me that they have a relationship, and it's just a relationship. It's not, people aren't discriminating against them for the relationship. They're just trying to figure out how to do their thing together. I just wanted a regular relationship for them. I wanted Bodhi to really connect with hip hop and the history of the culture. I wanted Aaliyah to have a sort of question about where she comes from as a mixed race girl, and try to understand what she's missing if she doesn't have a parent there. Those are really important journeys, I think, for these characters of color that I hadn't seen in a show, especially a science fiction show as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a lot of fresh faces, a lot of new talent in your
Yeah.
cast. Do you have special way of working with maybe actors who are a little bit less seasoned? How do you bring people along? Because you're asking a lot of them. They have to perform, they have to,
Yeah.
as you say, fall in love, they have to
Right.
fight the power. Yeah, they have a
Yes,
lot to
right.
do.
Yes, they do. Yes, they did. Yeah, it was a very, look, it was very challenging, I think, for a lot of them. And look, we had some great veteran directing talent on board, a very varied group as well, all diverse directors, so people that I know had a steady hand to sort of guide them. And then we had some great veteran actors as well, in our adult cast that were there to also set an example and sort of help and guide. But I gotta say, we just lucked out. We lucked out. We had a great experience in general in terms of casting. We wanted to be incredibly multicultural, and we were able to find the people, and you always, you hear these stories about, it's tough out here to make something diverse. And you know what? I call bullshit on that. It's not, you know what I mean? If you really try, if it's really a mandate, you can. And we lucked out. I think everybody in the cast did a tremendous job. Specifically our leads knocked it out. And, they're just incredibly talented group. I wish I could say I figured out some kind of formula to pull it out of them, but they're just really talented group. Yeah, I love them
Yeah,
all.
I mean, what you say is right. It's crucial that we have to build a roster of this talent in front of and behind the camera, and the only way
Yeah,
to do that is to hire people, right?
that's
You
it.
just gotta go
That's it.
find them.
Yeah.
So if you're just joining us, I'm talking to RT Thorne about Utopia Falls. And, RT, I have to ask you, have you yourself experienced institutionalized racism? The entertainment business isn't perfect, right? I'm sure there's stuff that you've had to confront.
Well, sure. Of course, without a doubt. I mean, look, I mean, it's a part of our society, and has been, from way before I was born. So without a doubt, I've been touched by it, and from little examples like being sort of pigeonholed or thought of as only being able to do certain things, to facing racism straight up on sets and stuff like that. It's absolutely happened, and look, I think that like I said, any artist who really feels what they're doing, they have to keep pushing forward no matter the barriers, and also look to try to advocate to help the next generation so they don't have to go through that stuff. So, you create stuff in form that hopefully educates and tries to change the way as well, through subject matter. You try to show it through your craft, and then you try to pave the way for people that are coming after you. And that's the battle that we have to fight. That's the cross we have to bear, but we have to bear it, and we have to try to change attitudes. And it's good to see that now, especially this year, there's a lot of great allyship that I see, on the front lines of this. I went out and protested myself, and just seeing the collective of people, that it was different from 6-7 years ago when Ferguson was an issue and we had Andrew Loku, and the difference that I've seen in the people out there, the diversity, white people, Asian people, like I said, the LGBTQ community, all of them being part of this particular movement, and visibly so, has been really heartwarming. So, yeah, I see the change starting to happen, and we just got to keep pushing. That's it.
Yeah, I'm trying to own my own, like the monolith of like critics,
Hmm.
where there can be institutionalized racism and criticism too.
Yes.
Like I don't know if you noticed that in the reviews that the show got, that there were people who were sort of judging it through a completely different lens
Yes. Yeah.
than you made it, or the people who are watching it.
Yeah.
Did you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, that's part of the plight of black art in general, has a history of that kind of thing where unfortunately, the people that are criticizing something, they have blind spots, and that's just and that should be an accepted understanding, but it actually seems to elude a lot of people that they have blind spots. So they start to judge something through, a lens that they have, and don't see, don't even understand the cultural, efforts in the thing, that are for audiences that aren't them, and they
Hmm.
don't see that stuff. And so, that's where a lot of, like, you get a lot of comparisons. You hear things like, oh, this is great. This is the Harry Potter, but the black Harry Potter, and you're like, yeah, it's not. Like,
Yeah.
it's not at all. And by doing those kinds of comparisons, sometimes what happens is inherently it starts from a place of, it's not as good as the original,
Hmm.
because you pull up the original and you say, well, it's just the version of this. And that is really dismissive, and is a real problem, and like in Canada, the funny thing is, like, we made this show. We have an incredibly diverse show. I'll tell you, we didn't get reviewed in Canada. So here we are making a show that is specifically tailored for an audience. Not only did we not get maybe some reviewers of color here that reviewed, we got no reviews from Canada. And that is a problem. And that's a problem that we're going to have to confront, in terms of supporting cultural art, black art in this particular space. But moving forward, other cultured art in this country, you know, critics like yourself, reviewers, journalists have a role in extending the stories of these art forms and advocating for them and showing their worth, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely something that is an issue, and you know,
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's crazy. It's crazy
yeah,
that I mean, it's such a beautiful, exciting, interesting show, and you really created like worlds within worlds, and it's nuts that that
thank
doesn't
you,
get reviewed. It's
thank
nuts.
you, I appreciate
Um,
it.
I would love to talk to you all day. I'm just going to ask you a couple
Sure,
more questions because
yeah,
we're
yeah.
running out of time. So, do you think this current moment is going to lead to change? Do you have hope that there will be like real change from the top of like who gets to make shows, who gets to make the decision to greenlight shows? Do you think that there's a way that we can translate all this energy into something lasting?
Yes, I mean, look, I mean, you asked me. Look, I'm an optimist at heart. You know, I say I'm an optimist at heart. I'm a cynic in the streets. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I have my own thoughts about how difficult that will be. I've seen, you know, we've seen this type of movement before, and people coming out and protesting before, and then we've seen it kind of dissipate a little bit. But I do feel, like I said before, I feel like this one has a different energy to it, and there is a sustainability that I see that is happening, and there's an advocacy on the part of you know, allies, that is really sort of there, and I appreciate that, and I feel like you know, sustained effort, you know, confrontation, as uncomfortable as that may be, is important. Discussion is important. You know, people not being. It's all right to feel afraid to talk about certain things, but don't just run away. Have a discussion with the people that are raising these issues, and talk about them and try to understand from their point of view how they feel. So I think I see a lot of that happening. So I'm very, you know, I am encouraged, and you know, Lord knows I'm not going to stop pushing, and so I feel like you know, yeah, some definite change can happen, and been a difficult, you know, 2020 has been, it was a crazy year. You
It's
know what I'm
crazy. Yeah.
saying? It's a crazy year. So I will say this: um, it's lining up to be a historical year, and I hope it's one of those years that, you know, we go through this trauma, we go through these issues, but you know, it's going to be one of those years that we can look back and say, yo, you know, 2020 was one of those years that actually really shifted the consciousness and changed things. And if that's what it takes, then I'm happy that we're going through it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny. There's a lot of comments here suggesting one kind of change that might be good for right now is Utopia Falls season two. A lot of
Let's go. Hulu, let's go. Yeah.
hashtag renew Utopia Falls. Who do you like? Who else is out there in Canada right now that we should have our eyes on? Like, who else should we be looking for and following the work of?
Oh, geez. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. You know, um, I mean, Kelly Fife Marshall is a young filmmaker who's doing some really, really dope stuff, and have real, you know, I'm really looking out for her. Yeah, let me think. Uh, I mean, there's like, in terms of like, we had some great people on our crew as well, like you know, Warren Sonoda, who's a dear friend of mine. Suds Sutherland, always doing interesting things. Yeah, I mean, uh, you know what? I mean, I just saw Alisa K. Harris's Pick film, her short film. She's a CSA winner. Floored by her amazing work. I think she's gonna be a voice to look forward to. Yeah, I mean, and then there's so, I mean, you mean in filmmaking in general, or do you mean anything?
Anybody that you have your eye on, yeah. But that's a good
Ah,
list. That's definitely a good place to start.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so sorry about this because I would love to keep going. What do you think you're most proud of about Utopia Falls?
Um, I mean, I'll tell you the truth. Like the fact that we got it made. Like I'll tell, like the reality of it is, you know, when I pitched the idea, when I developed the idea with the people over at Sonar, you know, I had never seen anything or heard anything like it, and I just was like, this is something that I want to see as a you know, a young black nerd who wants to see the two things that I love together. It was so different and outrageous, and you know, the fact that we actually got to make this combination for the first time ever is great. And for me, that's a wonderful thing, because now young creatives that look like me, that come after me, can see that a unique idea, one that has can make it through the ranks and can actually be made. And you can not only tell a personal story or a story that has elements of things that you believe in, but you can make it entertaining, and then you can further to that. You can hire people that look like you, or that, you know, share some of your point of views. You can employ them. You know, all of these kinds of things. It really, for me, is what's important, and the promise that it shows for people who are coming up after me. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And you can make it wildly entertaining and you can make it mean something, right? The fact that
that's
you're
it.
like putting out there these ideas that are so important to put out there.
That's it. That's it. And yeah, you know, it's just and you know, look, I what can I say? I got to make this story about these young people of color, these two black leads leading a revolution, using hip hop in the future, showing that, you know, power belongs to the people. I mean, you know, uh, that's amazing to me. That's
Yeah.
incredible that I got a chance to do that. So
All right. Well, I'm just going to say I'm going to leave you with two words. More, please, RT Thorne. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yes, no worries. Thank you,
All
Johanna.
right. You take
Appreciate it.
care. We'll be looking out for you.
All right. Take
All
care.
right. All best. Bye bye.
Bye.